Depends what damage you did over the 10 years.
Okay.
I think if you work shifts for 10 years, you'll be lucky to be the weight that you were when you started working at the end of it. Yeah. Think about what you do when you work a late shift or a very early shift. Your food patterns are out. Because why? We get that suprachiasmatic nucleus. Okay? That's the one that controls our sleep regulation, isn't it? So light hitting the skin. If we ask you guys to try and go to sleep here, it'd be very, very difficult. If we turn this into a cinema, okay, where the lights are down and that kind of thing, it'd be a lot easier.
Is there anything that you can combat with shift work, like blackout curtains, or is there
Yeah, of course.
anything to comment?
Yeah, you can try and compensate. You know, people do the same when they do flying, jet lag and stuff. So, you know, if you've ever done a long distance flight, or people who do it regularly, they're constantly exhausted because their body doesn't know whether they're coming or going. What we're going to talk about in a second is how you can actually manipulate some of these things. So these are common things that kind of tend to cause disruption to that circadian rhythm. So of course, shift work is up there, but actually crossing time zones, insomnia, stress, they all cause similar physiological responses. So what can you do and what can your clients do? Avoid stimulants. Okay? Now we all reach for these kind of things. See a massive Costa cup up there? So we all reach for those kind of things, particularly at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, because adenosine levels are rising. Okay? Adenosine levels are rising, which is telling us to go to sleep, because adenosine is one of the most powerful molecules we have that shuts down neural activity. So that's why we feel drowsy and sleepy at that time. And that's why alcohol makes us feel drowsy and sleepy, because alcohol is a GABA agonist, and GABA does a similar thing. Caffeine is actually an antagonist. So it actually actively competes for that active site, but doesn't do the same job, it does an inhibitory job. So caffeine inhibits adenosine, which is why after a Red Bull or a coffee or something like that, you perk straight back up. So avoid stimulants. That's going to influence your body's natural sleep urge. In fact, with caffeinated drinks, most places like Starbucks, they don't know how much caffeine are in things. There was a research conducted and actually reported on by the BBC a couple of years ago. And they showed that actually if you go into a coffee shop and say, "I'll have coffee please," the amount of caffeine in there can vary by as much as 8 times. Yet caffeine has been shown to increase the risk of things like miscarriage, and heart arrhythmias, and high blood pressure. Do you ever get people combating your discussions around caffeine? I mean, caffeine's good. You know, it's a very powerful antioxidant. So if you have good quality coffee, that can actually be a very protective thing. But by the same time, caffeine can also increase your heart rate. And what do we know that does? It increases your blood pressure. So it can have that influence. It depends how many you have and when you have them. Certainly I wouldn't recommend it any in the afternoon for anyone struggling with sleep. Alcohol we've already touched upon. Yes, it's a sedative. Yes, it will help you get to sleep fairly quickly. It might even increase the activity of slow wave sleep. But there is research out there to suggest that it won't necessarily increase the associated growth hormone, human growth hormone stimulation as well. Also, it disrupts the second half of sleep. So you wake up feeling more exhausted. You get less fluid sleep and less controlled sleep.
Is there any any research show the amount? For example, if you have a very small amount, is that beneficial or none at all? Or?
Small amounts can be beneficial. It's a little bit like the kind of efficacy of the Mediterranean diet. Mm-hmm. You know, things like red wine, for example, are particularly good in their anti-inflammatory benefits because of resveratrol, which is a potent antioxidant.
And as a sleep aid, for example, for people who struggle to fall asleep, if you have a small amount of alcohol, will that make a difference to the quality of the sleep if it's just a tiny amount?
Small amounts can make a difference, but it is dose dependent. So if you have a large amount, you'll have a poorer night's sleep than if you have a small amount.
Okay.
So it can make a difference. Because what generally happens with alcohol is that you get used to it. Okay. So actually, if you have a small amount, 5 years later, you might need a little bit more to have the same effect. Similar to most things that influence the dopamine cells and help you feel good. Okay. This is how kind of drug addiction works. First of all, it takes a little bit, but then the dopamine receptors become very used to it, and then you need more and more and more to get that same.
So you can say the same for antidepressants?
Antidepressants, I would say, is probably outside my scope of practice. Okay. We could probably talk offline about that, okay. But in an official capacity, it's probably outside my scope of practice, I'd say. But you do have antidepressants called selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, I'm sure you're aware of. There are ways to actually naturally boost the levels of serotonin in your body by eating foods such as tryptophan-rich foods. So foods rich in tryptophan help to increase serotonin. Tryptophan is an essential amino acid that increases serotonin levels because it's a precursor of serotonin. Serotonin then goes on to increase melatonin, which is a sleep-inducing hormone. The problem is that tryptophan has to wait its turn to get into the brain. It's a very bulky amino acid. So actually, if you eat a high-protein diet, your body is naturally going to choose the other amino acids to get into that blood-brain barrier first. So try and predominantly choose things like turkey and milk and certain red meats. So a warm glass of milk before bed, for example, because then you're not going to be competing with additional amino acids. They can be fairly tryptophan dominant. Also, have tryptophan with a small amount of carbohydrate as well. So carbohydrate actually helps it to cross that blood-brain barrier and have its influence on the neuroreceptors. But yeah, good question. It's a dose response. Tryptophan is on here, so I'll skip past that when we get to it. There we go. Who wants one of these beds? Right. Avoid high-intensity exercise before bed. High-intensity exercise, a game of squash or something. Don't always play five-side football. You get the graveyard shift 9, 10 o'clock at night. You'll be awake for ages. Because high-intensity football increases cortisol. It's your stress hormone. Gives you energy. So try and avoid high-intensity exercise before bed. Avoid bright lights before bed. Stimulates the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Even blue light from like laptops and iPads and stuff like that tells your body to be awake. Because that is reflecting, that is kind of initiating sunlight, if you like. Remember, your body doesn't know this stuff exists if it light is sunlight, and therefore you need to be awake. Avoid electrical devices in the bedroom. There's something called the Schumann resonance, which is basically suggesting that Mother Earth, if you like, has an electrical field of 7.83 hertz, which is a similar amount to light, and actually the same amount of hertz as some of the electrical devices in your bedroom. So actually, telephones, laptops, TVs can all actually influence the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Because how we see is just through wavelengths, isn't it? So if some of these have got a similar wavelength to light, they're going to stimulate the suprachiasmatic nucleus to tell you to be awake. So those of you who are looking at the iPads and stuff, that's going to keep you awake at night. So try and avoid electrical activity. Because it won't allow melatonin to be produced. Where light exists, melatonin doesn't. Foods rich in tryptophan we've already covered, so I don't think we need to cover this again, but remember, try to have them where possible in isolation of other amino acids, or as minimal. Don't have a roast dinner, for example, with lots of meat and lots of different proteins and stuff, because tryptophan will sit lower down that priority line. And try and have some carbohydrates to aid its passage into the blood-brain barrier. But we mentioned earlier about antidepressants being outside of my scope of practice, but a lot of them do respond to serotonin. Tryptophan helps to build serotonin. Take a warm bath or gentle exercise before bed. Has anyone been in a sauna or a steam room? Yeah, you sit there, you do nothing at all, you come out, you feel exhausted. You're almost driving home kind of like this. Okay, you've gone from a very hot environment to a very cool environment, or a relatively cool environment, even though it still might be 20 degrees. So your body actually stimulates you to say, well, if it was very hot and it's now very cold, it must have gone from daytime to nighttime. Go to sleep. So it stimulates you to go to sleep. So actually, having a warm bath or shower before bed or gently exercising heats the body up to such an extent that actually it's the following subsequent cooling down that really helps to promote that good sleep health. Yoga, Tai Chi, breathing and relaxation activities, they can stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. And particularly breathing techniques such as those which can help improve something called heart rate coherence. So you've probably all heard of heart rate variability. So heart rate variability is the balance between your parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. But actually heart rate coherence tells us whether that variability is in sync with other patterns in the body, particularly brainwave activity. And that can do things like improve cortical facilitation, to actually allow you to make good decisions, and reduce cortical inhibition, which is where you get the amygdala and the monkey brain taken over. So these kind of techniques actually allow you to make better decisions as well. So employing these, even if it's not to sleep, well actually if you employ breathing techniques and stuff before going out to a food shop, for example, you're less likely to reach for the fatty food you know are not going to help you. How many of you kind of step back and take a deep breath before you respond to something? It's reducing the activity to the amygdala, which is your monkey brain. Increasing prefrontal cortex activity and allowing you to make those executive decisions. Build a bedtime routine. We are creatures of habit. Okay? Go out of your routine, your body doesn't like it. So get your clients to get a routine before they go to bed, preferably avoiding some of the things we've already seen before. Reading is a great bedtime activity, particularly if they're reading something they enjoy. Your body will only allow you to go to sleep when you're relaxed. Because actually out in the wild, if you go to sleep and you feel agitated or threatened, well, you normally feel threatened for a reason. Ever seen a massive spider in the corner of a room? Okay, you look back, it's disappeared. You're not going to sleep so well that night. Okay, so do something you enjoy. Relax, that will help you sleep better. Okay, any questions? I appreciate we are pressed for time. But, well, apparently we're not pressed for time, so any questions at all?
Got a minute?
If no one wants to ask questions in front of the big group, and apparently the video's rolling, come and grab me at lunchtime. More than happy to talk to any of you about anything you might want to discuss. But hopefully it's given you some kind of insight as to why sleep's important, not only for the health of your clients, in terms of their risk of obesity, hypertension, potentially diabetes moving forward in the future, but also about the decisions they make in life. So remember, after a good night's sleep, you make better decisions. Okay, thank you very much.
Justin and some of the other talks are going to be around, so if you have questions, grab them later. It's now lunchtime, so get your stuff. Make sure you have a look about where you're going after lunch. Lunch is through here to the right, and then back to the sort of student union area. So enjoy. I've got no idea where it is, but someone said kebabs.
Frank, you just were speaking.
Sorry, what was the question? What, the student area?
It's just right here. Yeah.
I know. I'm a student.
Good. Well, you can lead the way then.
Yeah. Yeah, just turn right and then turn right again.
Right, mate. Good stuff. Engage through.
No one says
It's like less swearing than talking.
yeah, no swearing.